Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning, yeah. Hope you have a nice weekend and also finish our midterm exam. Okay, so I think you may have some clarification questions sent to TA, and I guess you have already got the clarification, right? Because the TA told me your question, so hopefully you have no confusion there. Um, Okay, so I think today I want to quickly finish most of the TCP section. We spent, I think, more than 1 weeks, about 2 weeks to uh, talk about this lecture. Okay, so let me share my screen first. Okay, so I think you can see my screen, right? I think last lecture or last week we mentioned um, the TCP transmission, right? Though we spend some time from the reliable data transfer protocol to specifically TCP protocol, right? And we discuss the relationship, the similarity and the difference between the GBR and SR previously uh, reliable data transfer protocols different scheme, right? So I think we also want to know something about the flow control and the connection management here, because previously we mentioned that if the the data is too much, right? So if sender and receiver needs to have a frequently exchange data, but during the meantime there is some congestion there, how TCP will handle that, right? So today we will talk about something related to this. So first is about the TCP flow control. So I think flow control is not difficult concept to understand. The idea is that from sender to receiver, uh, if the sender send a lot of message, a lot of data, a lot of segments to receiver, but the receiver doesn't have enough buffer, right? Or during the meantime receiving the other sender's message, right? How they can control this point-to-point flow, network flow. Okay, so the idea is what happens if network layers delivers data faster than application layer removes data from socket buffers, right? So the buffer could not digest what they have received, right? So the application layer doesn't, extract or get the data, right, as fast as delivery, right? So how should we do? So this picture just like you have a lot of, right? So water flows to you, flowing to you, how you can deal with this. So there should be some agreement in the TCP protocol to control this. Okay, so I think the idea is that you have TCP have the flow control scheme, so they have um, receive window in the template, right? Previously we mentioned the TCP template. So there is some message or information here to indicate that how many bytes the receiver is willing to receive. Okay, you are sending something to um, receiver, or receiver sends something back to sender, right? And in the TCP template, it will indicate that how many bytes the receiver is willing to receive based on the buffer, the current buffer situation. Okay. So the flow control is the receiver control sender. So the sender won't overflow receiver's buffer by transmitting too much too fast. Okay, so the idea is just straightforward, right? You don't want to receive a lot of mails or package every day, so you can just put some control in your mailbox, right? So limit how many packets you can receive per day, right? Otherwise, you will have a lot of packets to um, take care of, right? So this is similar idea. So the TCP flow control, the TCP receivers advises a free buffer space in the RWD field, right? So you can see here, so we have the buffer. So this is buffered data, right? So you have a queue, right? How much data have been already stored here, and how much space that can be used for the future data buffering. right? So you can see here is the research buffer size. We use RWND here to indicate how much data is still free, okay? And the operating system usually auto-adjusts the receiver buffer, and it could be set to defaultly by the 4000 bytes, right? 4K bytes, right? But the operating system can adjust that, can change that automatically, right? So the sender limits the amount of unacknowledged in-flight data to be received, right? So it can guarantee the received buffer will not overflow. So the idea is just you just monitor or you check how much data you can still receive, right? If it's too fast or too slow, right? So I think it's too slow is okay, right? Because you can ask to send you no more than 4K bytes data, but sending is slow. You cannot control that, right? But you can control how much data you can limit, right, to sender, right, as a receiver. Okay, so this is a TCP flow control. And as I mentioned, and you can check the previous slides in the templates here, we have the receive window to indicate how many bytes you are willing to receive. Okay. So this is TCP flow control. I think the idea is straightforward. We just quickly go through that. Okay. So another idea is about the TCP connection management. What is the connection management? I remember I demonstrated a small program, right, for start UDP start TCP connection, right, using the socket programming. And we specifically mentioned that TCP has to first establish connection and then can send the data. Oh, sorry, I don't think UDP needs to establish a connection, right? So UDP just sends the data directly, but TCP needs to establish the connection first. So how can TCP establish a connection? So, I mean, based on your straightforward idea is I just send something to you and you say, okay, let's establish a connection. So that's just a round trip, right? Wrong way. So one sending, one receiving. But there should be some problem here. So because I will give you an example, but general idea is that just a two-way. So we call this two-way, right? One send, one receive. So this is a two-way connection. So two-way connection has some problem to establish the connection or handshake. Okay, but anyway, I think the general idea is a connection or handshake is you agree to establish connection, right? You agree on connection parameters, right? Starting on which sequence number, okay, and then you just send and receive data. Okay, you just initialize that. You can think about that. So for the I think for the programming API, you have already seen that before, right? So you use a new socket for Python socket module. So one student asked me, he's doing I think assignment 3, right? So he's using the Python 3 and cannot get the program running well. I think he got the syntax error. So I mentioned in the email and I emphasized here again. So I think most of the, let's say not most of all the contents for the socket programming in this class are based on the Python 2.7. So you can always argue that 2.7 is too old. People are using 3.6, 3.7. Yes, I know that, but I think because of the textbook, right? The textbook is still based on the 2.7, and for some print, for some function call, it's based on the 2.7. But I don't think if you are familiar with Python, you can easily modify from 2.7 to 3 point something, right? But my point here is that if you want to directly running our code, please make sure you have the Python 2.7. Okay, and I think for most Unix based system, 2.4.7 is default, right? You can install your own Python 3 by Anaconda or some other software, homebrew, but 2.7 should be there, I think, right? So two different versions can work together. Okay, so I think some question here. 2.7 is deprecated, they don't have. Yes, I think so. Yes, I agree with you. That's why I mean that 2.7 is kind of old, but the problem is that if you use textbook materials, most of them or direct code will be based on 3.6 or 2.7, right? So I have no idea why they don't want to modify that code directly. But yes, as you say that you can easily modify the code to make it work. But I mean, if some students are not familiar with the Python but want to direct use that, my point is that you should use 2.7. But I can easily modify the code to 3.6, right? But from the textbook materials, you can see some difference here. Okay. Okay, so just a quick heads up. I don't think this is some problem, right? It's just a quiz up because a heads up because some of the students ask me what happened here, and I can tell that um, Python 2 or Python 3 may sometimes is a problem for some students not familiar with that, but generally speaking, it's not easy to modify. Okay, if you don't know that, you feel free to send me or Tia an email so I can let you know which line you can just change to make it work with different versions. Okay, so let's continue. So this is the Python scripts and APIs I mentioned, right? So then what's the problem, right? So what's the problem for the two-way handshake? Let's first see two-way handshake. So it's quite easy, right? Just let's talk, okay, right? You request connection X, server accept the connection X, right? This is a very classic, very basic handshaking, right? But where's the problem? Where's the problem, right? So you should think about, I mean, the interesting thing about establish a new protocol, a new solution is that you face something that maybe at the beginning you cannot see that, but after you have another thought, you find that okay, if there is some delay right here, if there is some packet loss, right? Because you cannot guarantee the establish two-way handshake, I can always receive your request, right? If all, I mean, can receive, but it has some delay or timeout, what will happen, right? So this is something you should think about, right? To cover all, we cannot always cover every cases, right? Every case, but here, two-way handshake, if they will have some problem with the delay, right? With some retransmitted message or message reordering, right? Because they cannot see each other. There would be some problem here. Okay, so let's just quickly see an example. Okay, I think this is the example for everything's good. Okay, this is everything good. Just quickly skip this slide. Everything's good, right? So what is the problem if there is some delay here? So let's see this example. If you send a request to establish connect X, okay, and the server side. So this is a client side, right? This is server side. So client sends a request connection X, right? So let's establish connect X, right? And the server receives that, establish the connection, and reply the accept connection, and the clients establish a connection, right? If there is no delay, if there is no loss, everything is perfect, I think there is no problem, right? Just as we see in the last slide. And if there is some delay, for example, here, if the the server accepts its connection or establish a connection, it replies accept a connection, okay, but there could be some delay. I'm not saying that it will be a delay, right? But it could have some delay, right? Based on the network situation. And then what will happen? So this established will be received a little bit late, right? But generally speaking, both sides has established the connection. Okay, eventually we'll be here. Okay, eventually we'll be here, and they will just do something else, and then client terminates connection. X completes server just forgot X, right? Because the connection just done. But as I mentioned, if there is some delay here, timeout. For example, if I time interval will be here. Okay, so for the client side, I don't receive any response from the server. What should I do? I should just retransmit the request, right? So I retransmit the request, but there will be some delay again. Okay, so let's just think about some extreme case, right? Because you want to cover some corner case, so you can do some assumption, right? So it could be extreme, but in the not very good network, right? So it can be happen, right? So you retransmit the request connection, okay? And because of some delay, the request would be received by the server side after the server side terminates the connection, right? Is that possible? I think this is possible, right? Like you retransmit something before the client side receives the established response from the server side, but this request would be received after the server side forgetting about the X. Okay, then the problem will happen. So because the server side just forget about the X, right? It will also will not also, but again, right? Just establish a connection X. But you can see here, after you establish connection, then client side just terminates the connection. So for the client side, there is nothing here. Okay. So this problem would be the half open connection. So for the client side, because it has already been terminated, but for the server side, because of it has already forget about X, and then it will reestablish X. So that means this connection would be halfway, right? Half open connection. Only server side will have this connection, but the client side will terminate this connection, right? So this case is a little bit complicated, but I don't think it's too complicated. I think it's reasonable, and because of you don't know how delayed would be your current network, right? So this situation could happen, and how can we deal with this situation, right? So this is our not problem. This is our question, right? So this is the first situation. So let's see another situation, similar, also because of the delay, but the difference is that there would be some duplicate connection. Okay, similar, but just duplicate. You can see something here, right? So send a connection request, accept the connection, okay? And then it send the data, accept the data, okay? Nothing wrong here, okay? Everything good here until here. And as we mentioned in last slide, it could be delayed when the client side receives the response from the server side, right? It could be delay and timeout, and the client side just retransmit connection request, and okay, it just go until, I mean, after the server side forgets X, right? And okay, another thing that this is another delay, okay, because of X plus one can be also delayed to acknowledge, right? So you just accept the data X plus one. So here the situation is that you just have the redundant, duplicate data. Okay, previously is that you have a halfway. I think the both of the case could be, you can think about like the same way, right? Because previously it's just that you have a duplicate or redundant connection, right? But here because you also send the data and you have the duplicate data, right? The problem I think is that there is no scheme to check if both sides are still alive. Okay, because here, when you just send this request, you establish that, but you don't know that in this side, this X has been already terminated. Okay, and then you just establish the connection. That's not okay, right? So two-way handshake scenario has some problem here. How should we address this issue, right? How should we address this issue? I think the simple solution is three-way handshake. Okay, two-way is too simple. It's too straightforward. It's okay for some cases, but it's not always okay. Okay, three-way handshake. Send something, reply something, and then they send again. Right. This is the three-way. Right. Just send, reply, and send again. Okay. So this is a three-way handshake. Let's see how client and the server will establish the three-way handshake. Okay, so so first is to choose the initial sequence number, X. Okay, sequence number. Remember that X is a number, right? Is the sequence number of the first byte in the byte streams, right? To be sent or to be sent. Okay, so sequence number is X. And we have another synchronized message, TCP sync. Okay, message, the bit is equal to 1. Okay, we send, this indicates that we request to establish the connection. Okay, and then the server side receives the initial sequence number, right? And it will choose its initial sequence number. And still remember, because the server and the client side, they can both send and receive the sequence and the data, right? So if we don't, I mean, purposely we see that if we only consider the client side is the sequence number and the reply acknowledgement number, X plus 1, right? But here, as we mentioned before, for the server side, it can also reply some sequence number because it is a message or it is the data that the client needs to receive, right? So you choose the initial sequence number Y and send the TCP sync acknowledgement, right? So that means that you want to establish the synchronization, establish the connection. I acknowledge that, and I acknowledging the sync. So here you can see here is the sync bit is equal to 1, sequence number is Y, right? This is what server side wants to reply, and the acknowledgement bit is equal to 1 and acknowledgement number X plus 1. This X plus 1 because of this X, right? So we still remember last week we mentioned that this number would be the next byte you expect to receive, okay? So because here just 1 byte X, you expect to receive X plus 1. Okay, so after that, the client side receives the thing acknowledgement X and indicates server is alive, right? Because you want to know if server is alive, and send the acknowledgement for the sync acknowledgement. This segment may contain client to server data. So you just reply the acknowledgement bit is equal to 1, and you are expecting to receive the byte Y plus 1. Okay, so receive the acknowledgement 1 indicates client is alive. I think this schema is pretty similar to the just a regular TCP send and receive acknowledgement, right? We mentioned last week. The only difference is that you need to add some bit here, same bit here, right? Acknowledgement bit here to indicate you want to establish the connection. And yeah, that's almost the same as a regular TCP send and request, right? Send the segments and receive segments. You use the sequence number, reply the sequence number, and plus, I mean, the original sequence number plus 1, right? Because you want to just expecting the next segment. next byte. Here we should expect a specific use byte, right? As we mentioned, not segment, just byte. Okay, so I think this is something like mm, not difficult to understand, because previously the issue is that you don't know if both sides are lives, right? Are lives. So here you just want to send and acknowledge, right? If both sides are live. This is the basic idea. So I think in the human beings, our human beings also use this three-way handshake protocol, right? So if you are some climbing, right, you or just ask your colleagues, your friends, right? So if are you ready, right? Everything is good. And he said the belay on, right? And then you just saying that climbing, right? You just confirm each other are in good state, and you just give the request. Okay, previously just I send, and the other side just received. I don't know. Both sides don't know what's the situation, right? For both. Okay, so that's a three-way handshake protocol. This is for the connection management. So flow control, connection management. I previously we mentioned also mentioned that, right, is reliable. So these are all the features for the TCP. So let's see a final feature I want to mention, because for TCP a lot of details here we cannot just go one by one, each by each, but from the high level, I want you to understand that there is some advantage of good things or benefits, right, from the different perspective, from the reliability, from the connection, from flow control. The last thing I think we want to mention is congestion control. Okay, so maybe some of you could be confused about the congestion control and the flow control. Okay, so the congestion control and flow control are different, because informally that congestion control is too many sources sending too much data too fast for network to handle. I think for flow control, flow is also something sending too fast, you cannot digest, right? Application layer cannot just take the data from the queue. But this flow control is just one sender too fast for one receiver. And congestion control is too many senders sending too fast, right? So congestion control, I think is more complicated, okay? Because you need to think about a lot of senders, right? Multiple senders, multiple receivers. It's not a point to point or single to single, right? So this is, as I mentioned here, this is a top 10 problem for the networking research, right? And yeah, it's always a problem, congestion control, too many flows, too many data in the network, and sending and sender and receives, how to control that, how to compete with each other in the same network. So how to do that, this is a problem. So I mean, here is just a principle of congestion control. Today maybe we cannot cover all the detail for the TCP congestion control, but I will share a video. You can check the detail about how TCP will do that. But the general idea we will talk about here, you can get some takeaways. Okay, so the causes or costs of the congestion control. This is scenario one. So let's always do some demo and scenario to help you understand, right? Before we go to some principles or some theoretical explanation. So this is the simplest scenario, one routers, infinite buffers, right? So this is something I don't think that will be happening, right? But anyway, let's see a simplest scenario here. So one router, infinite buffers, and the input output link capacity is R, okay? Both sides is R. And two flows here, one flow from A to A server, right? So another is B to another server, right? They share the same link. So the original data rate is a lambda in, right? and the throughput is lambda out here. Okay, so let's do some assumption here, and we also assume that there is no transmission needed because we assume a perfect case, right? Infinite shared the output link buffers, no transmission, no loss, no delay, no blah, blah, blah. We are perfect, okay? So for this case, what happens as the arrival rate, lambda in approaches R divided by 2 or half of R because you're sharing the link, right? And we're doing a perfect assumption. So that means lambda in is equal to lambda out, right? Because they are perfect. There is no transmission. You send how much data and you receive how much data, right? Throughput is just exactly the same as you sending and receiving, right? This is a too perfect situation. Okay, so you can see here the yin, right? So no matter how much you send, because you share the link here, the link capacity is R, right? So what I described, input is equal to output, only holds when the throughput or input speed or rate is no larger than R divided by 2, because you have two flows here, right? The two flows shares the same link, right? And this link capacity is R. So, I mean, this is the maximum per connection throughput. You can plot a figure here, right? X-axis is the input rate and the output throughput here is the y-axis, right? So you can easily plot this simplest case. Okay, what about the delay? You still remember? If the delay would be, I mean, if the point here is that if the rate is approaching the capacity, right? Remember the delay would be tends to or goes to the infinity, or trends is to go to the infinity, right? So the large delays are the arrival rate lambda in approaches to capacity. So this is the figure I mentioned in the chapter 1, right? So for the chapter 1, we mentioned that this is very important. You should know that if the rate approaches to the capacity, the delay would uh, tend to be infinite, right? So this is the case you see it again. Okay. So what about next case? A little bit more complicated, but I think this is more reasonable assumption. You have one router, you have finite buffers. Previously, we assume the capacities are, but the buffer is infinite, right? You can queue whatever you how you can queue the all the data you want, right? But in this case, you have a limited buffer, right? The queue will be limited. So if the data arrives, exit the buffer size, you just discuss the data, right? Packets, as we mentioned before. So the sender retransmits lost timeout packet, right? The application layer input is equal to application layer output. So this is the basic assumption, right? So I think this is a good assumption, actually. No matter what happens during the networking, you can always guarantee. And this is what TCP brings to us, right? Brings to application. No matters, no matter what happens in the retransmission delay, blah blah blah, the input from the application layer is always equal to the output of the application layer, right? You want to receive exactly the same amount of the packets, the data from the sender to receiver, right? So this is some assumption always be true, okay? But for transport layer input includes retransmission because we assume that the buffer is not infinite, right? It's finite. So the transport layer input includes some retransmission. So we should say here so here, yeah, this is notation, right? Lambda in is the original data rate, and lambda in prime is the original data plus retransmitted data, right? You need to send some data plus retransmitted data. So we should say here, lambda in prime is no smaller than lambda in, right? Because this is plus the retransmitted data. Okay, so you put those two things together, should be lambda in prime is larger or equal to lambda in equal to lambda out, right? Put them together. So the sender just send only when rotor buffers are available, right? So there is a buffer space here. Then you just deliver the package to application, right? But so this is the case, right? So because this is if there is buffer is free, there is some free space, right? You can send the packet, but there's some packet will be lost, right? Dropped at the rotor side due to the full buffers. So the sender knows that, and you can see here, if the packet sent through the link and the no buffer space is just discarded. Okay, so sender knows when packet has been dropped, only resends if packet known to be lost. Okay, so if this thing would be happen, okay, this is animation for another free buffer space is okay. You just get the packet. Okay, so I mean, this would be a figure. So previous is a perfect case, right? There is no buffer, there is no packet dropped. The buffer space is available, right? So the figure is that the lambda in prime and with respect to the lambda out, right, would be a perfect line here. But this is the real case if there is some packets need to be retransmitted. Okay, so you can see this is almost the same as original, but if the lambda in primes close to the r divided by 2 or half of r, right? That means original data plus retransmitted data is close or approaches to half of r. And in this case, because we demonstrate that r lambda in prime is larger or not or equal to lambda in is equal to lambda out, right? So if you consider some retransmit data, so when the r lambda in prime approach to half of r, the throughput will not be exactly equal to r divided by 2, right? This gap would be the wasted capacity due to the retransmission. So when sending out R divided by 2, some packets are needed to retransmission. Yeah, I mean, it's easy to understand here, right? Because you waste some capacity for retransmitting packet, right? So you cannot just get exactly or perfect throughput of half of R, right? So this is the second situation. The third situation, I want to quickly go through that. The third situation would be if there is some unneeded duplicates, right? So for the second case, you drop something, you retransmit. That retransmit packet can be still useful, right? But this is still remember, even if you retransmit, but sometimes the transmitted data are duplicate, right? Are unneeded data, an unneeded packet. So you need to drop in the receiver side, right? So it will further introduce some wasted capacity. Okay, so here is some wasted capacity. When sending out R divided by 2, some packets are retransmission, including needed and unneeded data, right? Duplicates that are delivered. So here means that you will further reduce the throughput because retransmission would introduce some unneeded data. Okay, so I think this is something that are realistic. Okay, not the first perfect line, right? So in the future, you may see some, this is our perfect assumption, this is our perfect model, but in reality, this will not be happening because you will have some retransmission, you will have some packet drop, you will have some unneeded or duplicated packets, right? Need to be discarded in the receiver side. Okay, so this is the wasted capacity due to unneeded retransmission, right? So the cost of the congestion is more work or retransmission for given receiver throughput. So you just waste some capacity for the throughput, right? Even the throughput, even the capacity is R divided by 2, you cannot approach to R divided by 2, right? Half R, right? So, and unneeded retransmission links carry multiple copies of the packet, decreasing maximum achievable throughput. Okay, so this is the cost of, I mean, the bad side of the congestion, right? So you just get some penalty here. So let's see a final case here. So you have the 4 senders, multiple paths, and then you have the timeout and retransmission. So this is the first path, right? The same assumption as the last slide. You will have some other path here from D to B, A to C, right? This is the 2 paths. And then we have some 4 paths from D to B and A to C, right? Because we can share the multiple paths, multiple routers here, okay? So you can see each link here, 2 paths share that, okay? So this is some assumption. So what we are trying to see here is that okay, what happens as lambda in and the lambda in primes increase. So this slide or this situation, we are trying to understand how one path or one flow would affect others. Okay. So if the our assumption question is that what happens if lambda in and lambda in prime increase? Sorry, I don't want to waste time. Let's just directly see the answer. Okay, so as the red lambda in prime increase, all arriving blue packets at the upper queue are dropped. Blue throughput would be decreased to 0. Okay, because you increase for the red path, right? You increase the lambda in and lambda in prime, right? And that would make the downstream or other flow to decrease the throughput. Okay, so this is another cost of the congestion. One packet dropped, any upstream transmission capacity and the buffering used for that packet was wasted. The point that here is that one packet drop happen, the upstream transmission capacity and buffering, you have already used that, but it would be affected by the other flows. So the previous capacity and the buffering used for that would be wasted. Okay, so you can see here the lambda in if increase and because of the congestion, it would be decreased, and the previous upstream transmission capacity and the buffering would be wasted, right? So the throughput would be decreased here. Okay, so here are some takeaways. You can remember both the concepts and the figure here. The figure can help you to understand what is the takeaway here. So the throughput can never exceed the capacity, right? This is straightforward. The delay increase as the capacity approach, right? So as the delay approach, as the capacity, as the this lambda in approach to capacity, right? So the delay was significant increase. This is what we mentioned before. And what we learned today is the loss of retransmission decrease effective throughput, right? We have the two, we can say that we have 2 levels of the decrease effective throughput. The first is loss and retransmission. Another is unneeded duplicates, right? Further decrease. the final the takeaway is the upstream transmission capacity buffering wasted for packet loss, right? So this is some congestion insights. Um, you can remember. I mean, the figure would help you to remember what is meaning here. What's the meaning here, right? So this is, I think this is a principle for the congestion. And I think the approach towards the congestion control is you notice that the congestion happening, what's the solution you can deal with the congestion control. So the end-to-end the congestion control is no explicit feedback from network. The congestion inferred from observed loss or delay, right? So you cannot know from the other endpoints, right? You can only notice the problem is happening is by observing the loss or the delay, right? So based on the different loss, different delay, you should try to do something here. Okay, so the approach taken by the TCP. So the network assistant congestion control routers provide direct feedback to sending and receiving hosts with flows passing through congestion routers. So the point that you observe here, right? What's the situation? What's the congestion problem, delay or loss, something here, right? And you pass the information from the congestion router to the host, okay? And you may indicate congestion level or explicitly set sending rate, right? You give back some information, and then the TCP congestion control would know how to respond, right? Okay, explicit congestion information sent to the both host, right? And then you can explicitly know the congestion information and how to deal with that. Okay, so I just want to quickly mention what is the congestion control approach here is this is specifically the approach used by the TCP here is the AIMD. So the sender can increase sending rate until packet loss congestion occurs, then decrease sending rate. Okay, I think the idea is just I mean, it's not difficult. You just gradually increase the sending rate until packet loss occurs, and then you decrease the sending rate to avoid the loss event. And then if you observe a situation getting better, you just increase the sending rate. If you observe a packet loss, you just drop. Okay, so if you follow this scheme, you will observe that the TCP sending rate increase and decrease, increase, decrease, increase, decrease, increase, decrease. Okay, so the additive increase, yes, you just increase the sending rate by 1. Okay, maximum segment size every RTT until loss detected, right? You gradually increase the sending rate every time by 1, right? And after you observe the loss, then you just decrease by half. So this is a TCP congestion control, right? Because the sending rate, you can control that based on the congestion information, right? So you just gradually increase that, because I think sometimes you do a lot of things like this way, right? You just try error and try if you close to the limit, right? So if you close the limit, exceed the limit, you just significant drop half, and then you just gradually increase. I think a CPU frequency or something adjustment is similar, not exactly the same idea, but right. So if you have more workloads, the frequency will be improved. But if you touch some budget of power budget or something, the frequency could be dropped, and you will just discuss some workloads or something, right? So this is like adjustment for the different computing system. Okay. So I don't think I have enough time to cover all the details, and I suggest that you can watch this video, TCP congestion control detail, how TCP will use the AIMD scheme to control the congestion, right? But the idea, I think I have already mentioned that it's just incrementally increase the sending rate. After you get some congestion information, you just you detect some loss, you just reduce by half, and then you just do another round. Okay, so this is some idea, and what is the benefit here? I don't think I have time to mention today. Okay, so I think that's most almost the idea of the TCP section. Maybe we can go to the next section here, the fairness. I think you can just check by yourself. And evolution of transport layer functionality, I don't think we need to cover by the course for this subject. Okay, so let's say we have already finished the TCP layer. This section. For the next lecture, we will start another section. Okay, so any question before I close today? Sorry, I spent, I mean, I don't give you time to ask a question, or I mean, to interact, because I want to finish this chapter. We spend many time here. So if you have question, you don't understand now, but you have some question, just let me know. Okay, so we can discuss that later. Okay, so thank you everyone. So see you on Wednesday, and today we will grade your midterm, and tomorrow we will post the midterm score. Okay, if you have question, just let us know by tomorrow night, maybe, because the Wednesday is the due date. We must upload the midterm score by the to the university. Okay, thank you everyone. Have a good day.